Hi, I'm Krylios, Team Rayceen Productions MC and producer. For this Team Rayceen forum, we had a discussion with the 4 new incoming members of the DC State Board of Education, elected in November of 2020. First of all, on behalf of Team Rayceen Productions, I congratulate all of you on your successful campaigns, and I wish you all the best as members of the DC State Board of Education. At this time, I would like you each to introduce yourselves and share some information about who you are. First of all, I'll have Jacque Patterson go.
Thank you for having us on. And it was a pleasure being on beforehand before each of us won. I'm Jacque Patterson, a proud Ward 8 resident and a parent of 2 children who attend DCPS school and a daughter that teaches at a charter school. And I'm happy to be the newly elected State Board of Education at Large member.
Awesome. Next, Allister, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm Allister Chang, and I'll be joining the DC State Board of Education as its representative for Ward 2. I am a literacy specialist, and I'm on a mission to equip every student with literacy skills. My father couldn't read well, and he worked hard as a waiter to connect me to the people who could teach me how to read. On the SBOE, I'll be working to connect every student with such opportunities.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Next, Eboni.
Hi, my name is Eboni-Rose Thompson, and I'm excited to join you today. And I'm also excited to be joining the Ward 7 seat on the State Board of Education. I guess what's important is Ward 7's home, DC's home. I am someone who went to schools in Ward 7. My mom teaches in Ward 7, and I actually currently have a sister who is finishing her last year of high school. So it is a great time to be joining the board, and I look forward to working with you all.
Awesome, awesome. And last but by no means least, Carlene Reid.
Hello, what a full circle moment. It's good to be back with you all. My name is Dr. Carlene Reid, and I am the Ward 8 representative to the DC State Board of Education. I have 10 years experience in education in the classroom setting on the state side, having previously worked for OSSE on the national level, and looking forward to bringing all those skills, massive community engagement to the State Board of Education to represent the residents of the Great Ward 8.
Awesome, awesome. Now let's begin with our first question. Now I'll throw out the questions and you can decide if you want to answer or not. I'll probably do 3 of every 4, 2 of every 4 for each question. So the first question that we'll begin with is, what have you learned, or what did you learn during the campaign about your community and about yourself? You can raise your hand and go. Okay, go ahead, Jacque.
I'll go. I think running at the at-large level as opposed to just the ward level, you learn a lot, that there are a lot of variations about education that people are very passionate about. And you get to really meet people where they are, as far as you can have someone in Ward 3 that are concerned about some issues, as opposed to east of the river, where you have Ward 7 and Ward 8 who have some other concerns that are not quite the same. And it's a balancing act. And it's going to be interesting as I work with the individuals here, Eboni and Allister and Carlene, to balance those, to make sure that every child has the equity and get the support that they need. So something that I learned, a lot of different views.
Yes. What about you, Carlene?
Thank you. I learned that the ward is pretty diverse. I had a pretty strong ground game throughout the race. I was in the race since November 2019, and all the way through the COVID pandemic until, of course, November 3rd. I literally hit a lot of nooks and crannies of the ward streets that I've never drove past, that I had to, kind of turn down. And it was great to see the diversity in the ward, but there are some common themes that neighbors have, and just basically looking forward to putting those things in action, but then also working to get some solutions around some of the diversity and thought that our neighbors have in Ward 8. So that would be the challenge. I guess what I learned about myself would be those classroom skills kicked in during the race, for sure. Individuals, what the State Board of Education race is, it's a down ballot position. some neighbors are very familiar with the Board of Education. Other neighbors we had some teaching moments, and basically just using all those skills, kind of put them into play to I guess learn that I still have that educator in me, and then also just kind of being resilient and steadfast in those challenging times.
Awesome. I'll go to my second question because you brought up the pandemic. So let's talk about it. How will COVID-19 impact education moving forward? What do you say to parents, guardians, and other concerned community members, who are really, really concerned about this and what is happening and not happening at DC public schools? Eboni-Rose Thompson, let me hear your take on that.
Sure. So I think one thing that we've heard a lot, and I think we should at this point maybe stop saying, is that none of us knew it was going to be a pandemic. And that's true. But we're also a good, 8 months, close to 9 months in now. And we actually have a chance to better prepare ourselves for what families will be facing moving forward. I think as representatives to the state board, one thing that'll be really important for us is to do our best and actually listen to families, to different education stakeholders like teachers, like principals, like community providers who work in schools, and help them or help kind of elevate not just like what the concerns are, but really like what some of the solutions they're seeing. I feel that we've had, unfortunately, some very disparate conversations around what we think families want, what we think families need, some really kind of one-size-fits-all solutions. I'll elevate kind of special ed as an example. People will say, well, what are we going to do about students with disabilities? As if every disability is the same, as if everyone faces the same challenges, and as if every person needs the same services or solutions. And so I hope that one thing we've learned and one thing we'll take with us is just being more open and flexible and reasonable around what actually works, and not just the stories we tell ourselves around who people are and what they need.
Important, very important. What's your take on it, Allister?
I absolutely agree with everything that Eboni-Rose just said. And I would just add, I'm coming from a world of working with public libraries. And one thing we have worked on for quite some time is the digital divide. And I do think that the pandemic provides us with a huge challenge to connect everyone to virtual learning opportunities, right? But also this chance to structurally improve how we integrate education technologies. And for me, it's not just about the hardware, right? I think it's really important that we work with parent-led advocacy groups like Digital Equity and DC Education to ensure that we're learning from this pandemic to build sustainable processes for onboarding all the stakeholders, students, parents, educators to ever-evolving technologies, and make smarter investments in them, not just buy the new shiny new thing, but actually invest in the technologies that students really need.
Very important, very important. Now, while COVID-19 will impact everything, we know there are many other areas of concern, right? So what are everyone's priorities and changes for which you will advocate? I'll start with Carlene.
Sure. So one thing that I said over and over again on the campaign trail was that I was looking for some alternatives for a parent seat and a teacher seat on the State Board of Education, or some ways to figure out how we can actually activate those voices, because there is a bit of imbalance in how we can actually make sure that those voices are heard. So I'm interested in exploring those options and begin to talk to current board members about just how things might look, as well as with the executive director. But I also think that, I know you said, COVID, but I also think COVID is ushering in new ways, and maybe not new ways, but new approaches to education. And a couple of areas that I would be interested in exploring more and that are in the purview of the Board of Education is one, homeschooling. that has been a theme that a lot of parents and across parents, I think there's some kind of stigma with who homeschools. But COVID has kind of, I've heard a variety of parents who are interested in homeschooling, and kind of during our orientation, talking to John Paul, who is the executive director of the State Board of Education, that we haven't explored in a long time. And I think a lot of families are going to start taking that option. Another piece of it is, because I work for the Department of Education, I do get an opportunity to see some of the national trends. I think we might need to start exploring online learning being a part of our public school system permanently as an option, and getting ahead of some good models for public schooling virtually, and making sure that we set the standard for that as the State Board of Education. So those would be kind of some priorities to look around.
Awesome. Jacque, what about you?
Yes, one of the things I had the opportunity shortly after winning to sit down and talk with the current board chair, and we talked about how we can make sure that the members that are here, a lot of people think we have a lot more authority than what we do, and how do we elevate these voices, because people have elected us to really voice their concerns, either from our particular communities or from across the city. And we need to make sure that we change the dynamics of how we actually advocate for those constituents that have actually elected us. So we sat down and kind of talked about what are some of the ways that we can go about to make sure that instead of policies coming to us, that we can actually propose policies. We'd be the initiators of policy. And so that's something that I want to work on. I want to make sure that the council truly understands and respects us, including the administration as well, because we were all duly elected in our particular positions to really advocate for our constituencies. And right now, I don't think the proper respect is given to each State Board of Education elected official. So we really want to elevate that voice so that we are truly representatives in our communities.
Awesome. Eboni-Rose Thompson, tell me, what will your priority what priority or change that will you advocate for?
Sure. I think three things are really important. I think the first is really bringing families and other stakeholders in to the conversation. The state board sets an agenda just like every other body. I think the state board also has a really great opportunity to be one that really sets an example and leads the way around how we actually include the community in our own agenda setting. I don't think that you have to ask permission to do that. When we talk about the state board's power and when we talk about what the board can be, I see a huge amount of potential in the board truly taking the representative part of being an elected representative seriously. So I think that's the first thing that we have an opportunity to do. And we have an opportunity to do that every year when we set an agenda, and we'll set our agenda in January. I think second, going along with that, is making sure once we set that agenda, we continue to work with our communities to make sure they understand how the things we're taking up really do intersect with and impact their lives. Mm-hmm. I think it's great to explain to someone what the responsibilities and niceties and all the authorities of a position are. I think it's even better to help someone understand why that matters for them. And I don't think that most people understand not just what the state board does, but I don't think they understand like why it matters to their life. And I think in talking with a lot of my constituents, there are things that they bring up that I'll stop them and say, oh, wait, do you know that's actually in front of the state board now? Like when people talk about history and democracy and civics education and everything, that this whole, crash course probably in civics that we're living through right now, the state board is taking up social studies standards. That matters. People think about that differently than they did a year ago or even 2 years ago for just like the future of our city. The third thing and the last thing that I will say is really important and a priority, but it's going to come down the pike a little bit later, is this is really a great time for the board to lead the way on thinking about what a comprehensive plan for education looks like. I can totally get into my own civics lesson around, we just did the census, we're about to do redistricting, why that matters. But at the end of the day, it's 2020, or it's going to be 2020. We'll have data. We know where people are. We know what people want if we talk to them. And we know where buildings are because we're doing the comp plan. And we should put those things together to come up with some type of plan to say, hey, it doesn't matter if you live in Ward 1, Ward 7, or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, we actually have a system that will serve you, not spotlights of this is great or that's great or my kid did this, but actually like we have a system that will serve every family. We have pathways, and we have education that will provide you a way to stay in DC if that's what you want to do, or go and conquer the world if that's what you want to do somewhere else. But we have the power to do that and to set those expectations and standards at the board, and really to lead the way in bringing people into that process.
Awesome. And Allister, let me round out this question with you.
Great. Yeah. So DC doesn't currently have a literacy strategy. And I'd be really interested to work with the three of you and the other members of the Board of Ed to create a coherent literacy strategy for our city, similar to literacy achievement plans and strategies developed by other governments, like Ohio's Department of Education, for example. And I think that, just as literacy education affects all of our shared futures as a city, I think all of us have a role to play in supporting literacy achievement. It's not just schools, but also public libraries, childcare centers, hospitals, food banks, community-based organizations. And I think there's an important missing part of the puzzle right now of thinking through who does what, when, where, why, and how together.
Definitely. So we are now at the last and final question that I am going to pose to everyone, beginning with, actually, let's start with Allister since you just ended. So finally, to close us out, share with our viewers how they can learn more about you, contact you, and keep up with what you are doing and what the council is doing.
Great, thanks. So yeah, you can keep in touch with me on Twitter at Allister Chang, which is spelled ALLISTERCHANG. Thanks.
Thank you. Jacque?
You can keep up with me both on IG at Jacque for DC, and you can also on Twitter, which is DC Advocate, is DC, both capital letters, _advocate. And you can follow me also on Facebook. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Eboni-Rose.
So I just attended part 1 of my orientation. So official accounts, I believe, are coming. Until then, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. There are not too many Eboni-Roses in the world because that is my first name. So I am easily found. My Twitter is at EBONI_ROSE, the letter T. And so is my IG. And then Facebook, the best place to go is to like my State Board of Education for Ward 7 page for now.
Awesome. And of course, running it out, Carlene.
Yes, as Ebony stated, official accounts are being set up. But for right now, individuals can reach out on all social media at Carlene D. Reid. And that's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And then I'll give you my cell, 202-618-0525. And eventually all those will be transferred to an official account. So looking forward to hearing from everyone.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best. To the viewers, please look in the description below for the links. Thank you, everyone. We thank you for joining us for this edition of Team Rayceen Forum. Please share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. Importantly, we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's totally free and only requires one click. Please know that we appreciate each subscriber, and the more subscribers we have, the more access we have as creators, and the better our channel can be. Thank you for watching.